Hey y'all, my name's Kennedy Brady. That's Kennedy like the president and Brady like the bunch, but since you're here, you can call me Ken just like the Barbie, and this is KenRaeB. A couple weeks ago in my episode with Kansas, you might have heard us briefly mention the book of Esther. Now, Esther is one of Kansas's favorite books, and when she brought it up, it kind of prompted me to go back and read it for myself. Esther is a book that is full of drama and irony. So if somebody ever tells you that God doesn't have a sense of humor, they are sorely mistaken. He does, and sometimes it's a little bit twisted. And that is what we're going to be getting into this week on KenRaeB. Here's the story of Esther. Meet King Ahasuerus. Now, that is the one and only time that I will be saying his full name on this podcast because ancient names and Southern accents really don't mix all that well, okay? We'll call him King Ahaz for short. Now, Ahaz reigns over 127 provinces, okay? Spanning from like modern day India to modern day Ethiopia. And Ahaz's royal throne, aka like his capital city, is a city called Susa, which sits like somewhere in the middle of modern day Iran. So in the third year of his reign, King Ahaz is like, man, things are going pretty well for me. I think we need to celebrate. And his idea of celebrating is none other than a literal 6-month party, okay? 180 days of partying. He invites princes and government officials and nobles from all 127 provinces and throws a rager that could put the club scene in Miami to shame. Okay, American frat boys could never. So after 180 days of showing off his royal splendor, King Ahaz is like, okay, well, what's 7 more? I mean, I just don't want to cut the party off. I feel like we need to have like a fade out. So the king downsizes a little bit and he decides to throw a week-long feast for everybody living in Susa, from the nobles to the paupers. And let me tell you, he went all out. There were these huge like white and purple linen curtain things. There were these massive marble pillars everywhere, and the floor was literally a mosaic made out of all these like precious stones. In fact, all of like the drinks were served out of golden cups and the food on golden plates and with golden forks and with golden spoons. Like this man, there was no expense spared, okay? He was just writing check after check after check after check. And when it came to drinking, there were no rules and no restrictions. The king actually gave orders to all his men to drink as much as their hearts desired and as much as their stomachs could handle. So while the king and his guys are putting American frat boys to shame, Queen Vashti, which is King Ahaz's wife, is also throwing a feast for all the women. Everybody's got their red solo cups and they are ready to party all week long. On the 7th day of the feast, Ahaz is as drunk as a skunk. He commands 7 eunuchs, which you might be saying, Kennedy, what exactly is a eunuch? So that is a man who has been medically castrated, okay? Ballless. And I know that my mom is going to have a problem with me saying that on this podcast. It's the truth. I'd rather say that than testicles, okay? So that's what we're going with. Anyway, these men were castrated so that they could serve in the government without King Ahaz having a fear that like, ooh, that one's going to take over and produce an heir and then his lineage is going to live on instead of mine. So all of the people serving him, cut. Anyway, he commands these 7 eunuchs to bring Queen Vashti to him in her royal crown, okay? She's smoking hot and she's the queen and he wants to show her off. Now, here's where things might get a little iffy. According to some scholars, King Ahaz requested that Queen Vashti be brought out to him in nothing but her crown. Okay, we're showing all the curves off. Regardless of if King Ahaz requested her to be naked or not, Queen Vashti outright refuses to come. Okay, she looks at all these eunuchs and she's like, who do you think you are telling me what to do? Like, you literally are not man enough to tell me what to do. Try again. Well, this just absolutely enrages the king because her saying no to them is actually her saying no to him. So the king summons his wise men, aka his divorce lawyers, and he seriously sits them down and is like, all right, guys, so she said no to me. What can I do to her legally? What can happen? So one of his divorce lawyers stokes the fire just a little bit and he's like, all right, dude, but here's the thing. She didn't just say no to you. She said no to us. Like, she's going to give all these women out here the bright idea that they can say no to their husbands. And then we have a mess on our hands. What do you think is going to happen with all these other women here that your wife said no? If the queen gets to say no to the king, they get to say no to their husbands. And that cannot happen. So now this guy's got the king all riled up. And so the divorce lawyer continues and he's like, hear me out, okay? Our laws here are irrevocable, okay? Once we write it and once we sign it, there are no take-backsies. So what if we wrote a law that basically said Queen Vashti is never allowed to be in your presence ever again? Okay, and I get it. It might be a little lonely, but give us some time and we'll find you a chick that you can replace her with. That way, all these women are going to hear about how we're punishing her and they won't dare say no to their husbands. So this advice did in fact please the king, and he does exactly what his divorce lawyers proposed. He sent out letters to all 127 provinces declaring that Vashti was #demoted and reminding all of the husbands that they need to be in charge of their households. Now, a little time passes, and on a cold and lonely night, King Ahaz remembers Queen Vashti. And now, he can't take her back. The law is irrevocable, but he does realize that he's missing something in life. A woman, duh. Ladies, they just cannot live without us. The young men who attend to the king, though, have a great idea. Have all your officers round up all the beautiful young virgins, stick them all in one house, pretty them all up, and then just pick whichever one suits your fancy. And of course, this idea pleased the king. I mean, he is a man after all. Now, we're going to introduce a new character, Mordecai. Mordecai is a Jew that is living in Susa. And he also has an adoptive daughter who is actually his orphan cousin named Hadassah, aka Esther. Esther is actually called that name for a reason. Esther actually means hidden or concealed, which is pretty fitting considering that Mordecai drilled into her head, do not let anyone know that you're a Jew, okay? Bad things will happen. You keep your identity a secret. Mordecai is literally like, do not tell a single soul who you are. And Esther follows his instructions to a T. Now, Esther is quite the looker. I mean, the Bible literally says she has a beautiful figure and she was real easy on the eyes. Now, when the king's orders were proclaimed, Esther was actually chosen as one of the beautiful young virgins, okay? So she is taken to the king's palace and she's placed in the custody of a man named Haggai, who is going to be in charge of all the virgins chosen. So we don't know if it was like just her absolute charm or her looks or what, but Esther quickly rises to the top of Haggai's favorites. And he gives her the absolute princess treatment, okay? Better makeup, better cosmetics, better treatment, the best bedroom, and better food. And every day, Mordecai walks in front of the king's gate just to check in and see how his cousin's doing. So I kid you not, Esther is literally in this harem with 400 other beautiful young virgins. And if you know anything about women, you know what a horrible, horrible idea it is to stick 400 of them in one place. Before being presented to the king, each of the 400 virgins has to undergo 12 months of beauty treatments. That's right. It's a spa day, all day, every day for an entire year. The first 6 months were supposed to be spent like softening the skin and the hair with all these different like oils and baths. And then the next 6 months were supposed to be spent perfuming the skin and the hair with different spices and ointments and that kind of thing. Now, when it's time for each girl to go and approach the king, she's allowed to take anything that she wants from the harem. I mean, a year-long spa retreat, and then you get to pack as many bags as you want when you get to leave. Kind of sounds like every woman's dream to me. One by one, the virgins would go to the king in the evening, and then the morning after, they would be taken to a second harem for concubines. So, if you haven't put two and two together, this was not the beauty pageant that you were told about in Sunday school. Okay, so the king was sleeping with every single one of these 400 women and then making them concubines, meaning that they were people that he, was okay to sleep around with but didn't really want to marry. And then, once he was done with all 400 of them, he would choose a new queen. Instead of pulling out their best moves on the pageant stage, they were pulling out their best moves in the bedroom. And get this, there was going to be no round two unless the king was really that wowed that he remembered your name and summoned you again. So, the stakes are pretty high at this point. I mean, Esther has spent a whole year of her life beautifying herself, all for one night, where the best thing that can happen to her is that this king can just remember her name. And keep in mind, she's against 400 other women, and this guy's usually plastered. That's a lot of nights, a lot of drinks, and a lot of names. Statistically, things are not looking too good for her. So finally, it's Esther's turn for a night with the king. And as she's leaving, instead of just racking up whatever she can take from the harem, she looks over at Haggai and was like, okay, if you were in my shoes, what would you take? And of course, Haggai tells her exactly what she needs, and that's all she takes. Nothing less or nothing more than what he said. With this act of self-restraint, along with her beauty, Esther starts to gain the favor of everyone she comes into contact with. Now, We don't know what went down in the bedroom that night, but what we do know is that King Ahaz ended up loving Esther more than any other woman that he slept with. When it came to getting down, Esther knew what she was doing. So he makes her queen, and he takes the crown that once belonged to Vashti and puts it on Esther's head. In fact, he was so in love with and so enthralled by Esther that he granted a kingdom-wide tax refund. And on top of that, he sent gifts to the provinces. She really must have been something in order to get a king to not only issue a tax refund, but then to send gifts and presents on top of that. Okay, Mordecai is sitting outside the king's gate, just anxiously awaiting to hear what's going to happen to his cousin. And while he's pacing back and forth, he hears two of the king's eunuchs talk about how they plan on laying hands on King Ahaz as soon as they possibly can. I mean, granted, if the king had castrated me, I would probably think about killing him too. Like, I can't even blame these guys. So Mordecai goes to Esther, who now has the king's ears, and lets her know that her new husband might have a little bit of a problem on his hands. So Esther is all, hey baby, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I may have overheard that two of your eunuchs might want to kill you. Yeah, you might want to look into that. After an official investigation is completed, the king strings up these two eunuchs and hangs them. Enter in yet another new character, Haman. Haman is one of King Ahaz's officials, and he's up for a promotion. The king sets Haman's throne above all the other government officials. All of the king's servants bow to Haman, but mostly just because the king told them that they had to. But Mordecai? This guy's not bowing to anybody. So the king's servants go to Mordecai and they're like, dude, do you have a death wish? Like, take a knee or else. Day after day, they all try to get Mordecai to bow down, but it is just in one ear and out the other with him. So these servants, they go running to Haman being like, might want to take a look over there. I don't think that one guy's bowing down to you. They all know that Mordecai is a Jew and that there's some tensions there. So they want to see if Haman is going to do something about it or if he's just going to leave it alone. When Haman finds out that Mordecai won't bow to him, he is furious. Actually, that's probably not even the best word to describe how he's feeling, because he decides it's not enough for just Mordecai to die for this. All of the Jews have to die. So Haman literally throws dice to decide what day he's going to try to kill all the Jews. Okay, he just shakes and rolls, and they land on the 13th day of the 12th month. With his lucky day in mind, okay, Haman goes to King Ahaz and he's like, brother, me and you have to have a chat. You know those Jews? They're like all spread out over the whole 127 provinces you control. Yeah, ain't it kind of weird that they live by like their own set of laws? I mean, personally, I don't think that that's a good look for you. Like, these people mixed in just obeying their own sets of laws and like what, not really obeying yours? Like, make that make sense. I personally think something needs to happen to them. Like, maybe they all need to die. You know, if only somebody could do something about this problem. Oh, wait. I can. What if I offered you, I don't know, like 375 tons of silver? And in exchange for that, you'll let me deal with this problem. You'll just let me kill everybody? Does that sound like a deal to you? So to put this into perspective, based on how you're evaluating all that silver, Haman was offering King Ahaz up to literally 280 billion with a B dollars. That's actually worth more than Jeff Bezos's net worth, which only comes in at like a minor 278.5 billion. I mean, that's chump change. And if there's one thing that talks, it's money. So as soon as the king hears this, he takes off his signet ring and just gives it to Haman. He's like, bro, you got the ring. Make whatever law you want to make, sign it in my name, seal it with my ring, do whatever you want to do. So with the king's signet ring on his finger, Haman can now decree any law he wants to. And just like the law that the king made about Queen Vashti, it's irrevocable. So Haman sends out letters and decrees to every single province, written in King Ahaz's name, okay, and sealed with his signet ring, calling for the outright annihilation of the Jews. The young, the old, the women, the children, all of them, set to die on the 13th day of the 12th month. The messengers hurry away to deliver the messages to all the provinces, and as the news breaks in the city of Susa, King Ahaz and Haman sit back and enjoy a drink. Mordecai finds out with the rest of the city of Susa that things are not looking good for the Jews. So he tears his clothes and he puts on a sackcloth and puts ashes all over his head, and he goes out into the middle of the city and just weeps for his people. So then he goes up to the king's gate, which he wasn't allowed into at this point because he can't enter wearing sackcloth and ashes and being in a state of despair like that. So he goes up to the king's gate and he's just weeping and mourning for his people. So a few young servants and eunuchs come to Esther to deliver the news, like, hey, this is the law that just went out. And she is obviously deeply distressed. But here's the kicker. She still hasn't told anybody that she's a Jew. So they've given her this news and she just goes to bawling. And I'm sure her servants are like, why is she freaking out this bad? Okay? Like, this is a little weird. I don't think this has anything to do with her. Esther then sends some clothes to Mordecai, but Mordecai refuses to wear them. And if he's not dressed properly, then he can't enter the palace, which means that these two can't meet up and talk about the future of their people. So Esther sends a eunuch to find out more about this decree from Mordecai. Mordecai tells the eunuch everything he knows, including just how much money Haman is willing to spend on the destruction of the Jews. Mordecai sends the eunuch back to Esther with a written copy of the decree, hoping that the eunuch will read it to Esther and explain it to her. And then, have her beg the king to take it all back. So when Esther receives word from the eunuch, she sends him straight back to Mordecai like, dude, okay, you want to talk about laws and decrees? What about the one that says if I approach the king without his permission, without him literally calling me by name, that I die, okay? Unless he extends his scepter out to me because I've won his favor, he's going to kill me. And you know what, buddy? The king hasn't sent for me in a month, okay? So clearly, this plan is not going to work out. So Mordecai sends word back to Esther through the eunuch. Good grief, they are running this poor little guy to death. Like, at this point, Mordecai, just go put on some clothes and talk to her. Anyway, Mordecai gets a little harsh with Esther here, and he's like, oh, so you think because you're queen that you'll just escape the death that's planned for all of us? Absolutely not. Absolutely not, sister. No, actually, your fate is going to be even worse than ours. And if you keep your mouth shut, whatever. The Jewish people are going to be saved from somewhere else by someone else, okay? But you're going to die. And who knows? Maybe you were made to be queen for this exact reason. Like, maybe there's a reason that this is all happening and you, a Jew, happen to be queen, okay? Don't chicken out when all these people are depending on you. After hearing Mordecai's a little rough around the edges pep talk, Esther runs the legs off this poor eunuch one more time. She goes, well, I guess we're doing this. Mordecai wants you to gather every Jew you can in the city and fast and pray for 3 days and 3 nights. And I'm going to be doing the same with my girls and my eunuchs. And then after the 3 days is over, I will go to the king, which I remind you is against the law. Okay. And if I die, I die. So Mordecai honors her wishes and he gathers up some buddies, and for 3 days and 3 nights, there's no food and no drinks and nothing but prayer. After 3 days of fasting, Esther slinks into her royal robes and stands in the inner court of the palace, near the king's bedroom. Now, the king was actually in the throne room at the opposite end of the palace. And personally, I think here we get a glimpse of how smart Esther is. On one hand, she's keeping a pretty big distance between her and the king, trying to show a little respect. On the other hand, I'm sure that seeing Esther all dolled up and sitting beside his bedroom probably sparks a few memories in the king's mind about why she's his queen in the first place. Maybe he's catching some warm and fuzzy feelings, if you catch my drift. And sure enough, those warm and fuzzies do their job, and King Ahaz has absolutely no problem letting this bombshell approach his throne. He extends his golden scepter, which means the queen can live to see another day, thank God, and Esther crosses the palace to touch the edge of it. So the king sits with her and he's like, baby, what is it? I will literally give you anything you want, up until half my kingdom. It's all yours. You want a pony? I'll buy it. You want my credit card? I'll give it to you. You need gas? I will buy it for you. And in this economy, that is saying a lot. You just tell me what you want. Now remember, if there's one thing Esther is good at, obviously it's playing the long game. So what does she want? Nothing more than to cook for her husband and Haman. If it pleases you, just let me make you a sandwich. Okay, maybe it's a little more extravagant than that. Maybe it's a feast. But regardless, Esther knows that the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. The king sends for Haman and tells him to hurry because there's food waiting. After their very extravagant meal, everybody decides to kick back and have a glass of wine. The wine is flowing, and either King Ahaz is in a really good mood, or he knows that there's probably more to what Esther wants than just to fix him a meal. So again, the king tells Esther she can have anything she wants. I mean, a puppy, a Denali, a new house, you name it, I'll get it. But Esther is a smart lady, and so she looks at the king and she's like, baby, what I really want is to make you another sandwich. Can we have dinner again tomorrow night? And then I pinky swear I will tell you exactly what I want. And Haman, well, he's just sitting back happy as a clam through all of this, okay? I mean, 2 feasts alone with the king and queen. I'm telling you, he's in the big leagues now. Go ahead and climb up on that high horse, buddy, okay? Get up on that pedestal. I know you want to. And as Haman leaves the palace, who does he see but none other than Mordecai? And Mordecai doesn't act one way or the other to him. He is not shaking in his boots, and he's also really not paying much attention to the fact that he's there. Haman is enraged at this, but he manages to keep it together until he gets home. And when he gets home, he has his wife invite all of his friends over because he's got a debrief, it's been a long day. So all his friends come to hang out, and Haman's all, life is pretty great right now. I have literally 10 sons, okay? I got promoted at work. I'm having dinner with the king and queen. Hello, if y'all want my autograph, I'll give it to you now because it's only going to go up in value. You would think that this guy would not have a complaint in the world, but he does. So he continues mouthing off to his buddies, and he's like, you know what? Actually, none of this means anything as long as Mordecai is breathing. Did I tell you I passed by him today and he, again, didn't bow down? What are we going to do with this guy? And looking to console him, his wife and his buddies came up with a brilliant idea. They're like, Haman, is the answer not obvious? Just build gallows that are 75 foot high and hang him. Like, why didn't you think of that? So, of course, Haman's down, and he has the gallows constructed in his backyard. Fast forward, and the sun has set, okay? It is bedtime, people, but King Ahaz kind of having trouble counting sheep, okay? He just has a really bad case of insomnia. He needs some white noise, so to speak, just a little bedtime story. So he orders that his servants read him the Chronicle of Memorable Deeds, which is basically just like the news report of people doing stuff all day long in the kingdom. Well, remember when Mordecai ratted out those 2 eunuchs and saved the king's life? I mean, I would consider that a memorable deed, wouldn't you? Well, sure enough, it's recorded in this big book. The king hears it, and he sits up in his pajamas, and he's like, that dude really saved my life? What have we done for him? Like, did we reward him in any kind of way? I mean, like, surely we can send him like a gift card or something, right? But the king's attendants are like, well, I mean, like, we like recorded it in this book, but like that's kind of all we've done. Suddenly, the king and his attendants hear a thump in the middle of the night. Okay, sounds like they've got a late night visitor. And the king's like, who in the world is trying to hit me up right now? To which his attendants look out the window and they're like, oh, look, it's Haman. Haman, while these gallows are being constructed, are like, you know what? There's no time like the present. I might as well just go ask the king if I can hang this guy now. So as Haman approaches the king, he's like, you know what? I can't sleep. He's already here. I might as well just pick his brain about all this. Okay, Haman. So if I wanted to honor somebody, what do we think is the best way to do that? Like Amazon gift card, a paid vacation, like an honorary statue in the town square? What are we feeling? And Haman, in his big head, is like, well, there's nobody that the king would want to honor more than me. So like, how would I want to be honored? So Haman looks at the king and he's like, all right, hear me out. Take some of your robes, give them to him. Make sure he's all fitted up, okay? Robes, crown, the whole 9 yards. Oh, and you know what? Then put him on one of your horses. Let him ride one of your stallions all through the town square. And actually, a really nice cherry on top would probably be if you could get some attendants like following him around the whole time and just shouting out like, this guy's the king's favorite. This guy's the king's favorite. Look at him in his robe and on his horse. Like, this guy's a pretty big deal. I think that's a pretty decent way to honor a guy, So the king agrees. It does sound like a pretty good plan. So he turns to Haman and he's like, you know what? You're so right. That is such a good plan. Take the robes, take the horse, and then I want you to go and put them on Mordecai the Jew and then lead him around town. And don't forget to yell out for him in the middle of the town square that he's a great guy. Chop, chop. You might want to get to it. So Haman takes the robes and he takes the horse and he clothes Mordecai himself, okay? Plops him up on this horse, and Haman himself personally has to lead Mordecai around town being like, this guy's cool. Look at him. He's great. Haman is actually living his worst nightmare right now. And after the parade around town is finished, Mordecai returns to the king's gate because he's always there waiting on Esther. And Haman runs home literally with his head in his hands, crying and whining about it. And when he gets home, his wife and his friends pull out the cheese and crackers because something's got to go with that wine, okay? And they're like, Haman, I really hate to tell you this. Things are not looking good for you. Look, if this guy's a Jew, this is not going to end well for you. We don't know how else to tell you. Like, you are literally going to fall flat on your face before him. They don't even get halfway through their speech before a couple more of the king's eunuchs come back to bring Haman to the next dinner with King Ahaz and Queen Esther. They eat. Everybody's satisfied. Of course, the wine starts flowing again because let me tell you, if there's a drink, these guys are going to have it. And the king asks Esther for a third time, "What do you want?" I mean, he'll give her anything, literally up to half his kingdom. And that is saying something because this man is literally having men castrated left and right to protect this kingdom. And he is so in love with Esther that he's willing to give her half of it. He is obsessed with her. And so Esther finally realizes, okay, time to admit who I am and what I want. It's time to strike. And she's like, "Well, honey, you might want to sit down for this. I'm a Jew." Shocker, shocker, I know. So that law that's going into effect really soon, yeah, not so great for me and my people. I'm actually pretty upset about it. Is there anything we can do about that? Because I'd rather none of that happen. I mean, listen, if my people were just going to be sold off into slavery, I probably wouldn't have even opened my mouth. But this whole destroying them, annihilating them, killing every last one of them seems a bit extreme to me. And I know it is nothing compared to the losses that you've gone through. And I know that you have a lot on your plate, okay? It's just, it would really mean a lot to me if we could figure this out together, babe. So King Ahaz sits back and looks at Esther and is like, "Baby, who the heck would dare do this to you? I'm appalled. What is going on here?" Esther, at this point, picks Haman up and throws him right under the bus. And she's like, "Well, funny enough, the guy that wrote that law actually here at dinner with us tonight, right across the table from you. Haman, why don't you give us a little insight as to what that law is and what's going to happen? 13th day of the 12th month, right? Yeah. Go ahead and explain to us how you want to kill all the Jews. How you want to kill me. I'm waiting." Haman is literally shuddering at the dinner table, okay? He is scared for his life, and he should be. Now, King Ahaz is not just upset, he's drunk and upset. So he decides to stomp off to the garden, kind of get some fresh air and sober up a little bit before he makes any decisions. Haman stays behind to beg Queen Esther for his life. Okay, she's reclined on a couch and he ends up throwing himself on her. And wouldn't you know it, at that exact moment is the time that the king stumbles back into the palace. And what does he see? Oh, not only does Haman want to kill his wife, but now Haman is throwing himself on his wife. King Ahaz is literally about to kill Haman with his bare hands. He's like, "Oh, so you want to touch my wife in my house?" Oh, no. So then the king's attendants throw a bag over Haman's head and they tie him up while they figure out what they're going to do with him. So then one of the eunuchs pops up beside King Ahaz and he's like, "Hey, you remember that guy Mordecai? The one that we just paraded through the town square for being such an awesome dude and saving your life?" Yeah. So Haman actually had these gallows constructed at his house because he was going to hang Mordecai. So just know that's an option if we want to do that to him instead. I mean, they're 75 feet high, honestly, kind of impressive. And they're up to standard. I mean, newly built, might be nice to break them in. And so the king responds and is like, "Yeah, I mean, why not take advantage? Let's hang Haman." And Haman is hung on the gallows that he himself built for Mordecai. Afterwards, the king is able to breathe a little bit better, okay? He's calmed down just a little bit, and he decides he's going to give Esther all of Haman's estate. Esther then lets the king know that Mordecai, the guy that you've been really impressed with, he's actually my cousin. And before Haman's body is even cold, King Ahaz pries the signet ring off of his hand and hands it straight to Mordecai. Esther then says, "I've got a lot on my plate already. Mordecai, why don't you go ahead and just take over Haman's estate?" But still, people, we've got problems, okay? Lest I remind you, the law that Haman signed, even though he's dead now, still irrevocable. So Esther falls to the king's feet and she is weeping and mourning and trying to figure out a way to save everybody. She begs him to rewrite the laws, but there's not really much he can do about it. So Mordecai steps in and he uses the king's signet ring to give the Jews a fighting chance. And I mean that very literally. He signs and seals a new decree that allows the Jews to fight back against any man, woman, or child that tries to kill them on the 13th day of the 12th month. So he sends letters out to all 127 provinces. He puts back on the king's robe, puts the crown on his head, and he is out in the streets jumping and shouting for joy. And in fact, this is happening across all the 127 provinces as the Jews find out that, oh, yeah, we can legally defend ourselves now. There were actually a ton of non-Jewish people who started declaring that they were Jewish just because they were so afraid as to what all was going to come on the 13th day of the 12th month. So the fateful day rolls around, and wouldn't you know it, but the Jews, and I quote, gained mastery over those who hated them. In Susa alone, the Jews killed about 500 men, including Haman's 10 sons. When the number of people who were killed in Susa gets reported back to the king goes to Esther and he's like, baby, they killed 500 people and all of Haman's 10 sons are dead. What else do you want? So Esther just says exactly what's on her mind. Well, babe, I mean, if it pleases you, can you please let my people do tomorrow what they did today? Like, could we just have a little extension? Just one more day, just in case anybody tries to come for us tomorrow. Oh, and can we also string up and hang Haman's 10 sons? Would that be doable? Like, I know that they're already dead, but can we just string them up, show them off? And the king, of course, just commands that this be done for her. I mean, hashtag true love. And then the next day, the Jews kill another 300 people in Susa. As for the rest of the provinces, the Jews killed roughly 75,000 of their enemies. And to celebrate, the Jews established the holiday of Purim, a feast to celebrate their victory over the day that Haman rolled the dice. Literally, because dice in Hebrew is pur. And to wrap everything up with a nice and pretty bow, in the end, Mordecai was held in more esteem than anyone before him. Honestly, in more esteem than Haman could have ever dreamed of. You want to know what my favorite thing is about this story? The fact that God is not mentioned one single time. And I know, you might be thinking, Kenny, that's kind of weird to say. Kind of feels a little blasphemous. But I promise, it's not. I just think it's really cool that God is literally woven throughout the story. I mean, you can feel him in between every single word, yet he's not mentioned once. And I think that's a really good reminder that, sometimes we don't see God in the present moment. But that doesn't mean he's not behind the scenes orchestrating things. I mean, literally, Haman was building gallows to hang Mordecai on, only for it to flip and Haman himself be hung on those gallows, while Mordecai takes his place and gets more esteem than he could have ever dreamed of. It's nuts. But that's just how God works. I feel like God just sometimes giggles, when we're far enough removed from a situation that we can have a little bit of hindsight because, that's 2020. But I think sometimes he just sits back and giggles like, yeah, you didn't expect me to take that route, huh? But hey, it's where we are and it all worked out for my glory. So just saying, I might know a little bit about what I'm doing. So maybe you're just sitting back and you're like, I really don't understand how all these puzzle pieces are going to fit together. That's okay. You're not the one putting the puzzle together. He is, okay? Remember that. He's the one with the picture at the front of the box, not you. And yeah, you may not feel his presence in the present moment, but that doesn't mean he's not there. I promise you at some point, you're going to take a step back and see that he's been in every word, in every moment, and in every piece of the puzzle. At least to me, the biggest lesson from this story is even if you don't feel like God is there, he's still doing something. So yeah, and I mean, just whatever you do, maybe don't construct 75-foot gallows in your backyard. Might spell out doom for you. I don't know. Thank you for listening to this episode of KenRaeB. Be sure to like and subscribe. You can find me on Instagram, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and Substack at KenRaeB. Thank you for listening.